In order to be able to use AvePoint online services such as cloud backup and cloud governance with your Office 365 tenant, AvePoint Online Services needs to know what objects you have in Office 365. It discovers those through auto discovery. When you first configure AvePoint Online Services, auto discovery will be set up as what's called an express profile. An express profile will scan for all object types, including mailboxes, SharePoint Online Site collections, and Office 365 groups, including Teams groups and Yammer connected groups. Every object of that type will then be grouped together in what's called the default container. We can see these if we go into our scan history. And down towards the bottom, for mailboxes, for instance, everything is going into my default mailbox. For my Office 365 groups, regardless of the group type, they're going into my default Office 365 group container. And that's why when you go into solutions such as Cloud Backup, those are visible. If you would like to break up your objects into your own containers for increased visibility, you can do that by creating what's called an advanced profile. First thing I'm going to do is to edit the Express profile, just to remove my groups, so that way I don't have any conflict between the default container and then the containers I'm going to create. Back under Scan Profiles, we can then create a brand new profile, and at the top we choose Advanced Mode. In this example, let's say that I would like to be able to identify my teams from all of my other types of Office 365 groups. I would like the teams to be in a container called Teams, and everything else can be grouped together. For that, we can go to the Office 365 groups and create a new container. Enter a name, and then down below that you configure the rule to find those objects and put them into your container. Please note, these containers do not impact Office 365 in any way. This is literally just your ability to break them up in AvePoint Online Services for better visibility and control. After entering a name for the rule, you then configure the rule. Now the available options are based on the tab that you're using. So since I'm looking at Office 365 groups, I only have a couple of options. I'm going to go with Groups Property for what I'm trying to do here. Group Type equals, and I want to locate my Teams enabled Office 365 groups. I can add multiple conditions if I need to, but in this case, all we really have to do is target the type. Then down at the bottom, I'll click Save. Now that that rule is in place, we have to ask the question, well, what happens with everything else? What happens with your non-Teams enabled groups? What happens with your Yammer connected groups? Well, down towards the bottom, don't add them to the system default, add them to a custom container, and a custom container can simply be any name that you choose. Once you've entered that name, down at the bottom, we click Next. Please note that I would continue to do that across multiple tabs as necessary, or you can break them up into separate advanced profiles. Now we name the profile and give it an optional description. Next, you will need to select an authentication method. We strongly recommend using an app profile. If you have not created a second app profile under App Management, you can go to the drop-down and click it here so that you can create that on the fly. The app profile requires certain level, pause for edit. App profiles require certain levels of elevated permissions, and it is the most modern and efficient way to communicate with Office 365. You cannot use the same app profile across several different auto discovery scan profiles, and that's why I cannot select the default one in here. It's already being used for the Express profile that is running for all of our other object types. So we strongly recommend having a second app profile ready to go. You can also, though, come in here and use a service account profile, and that would also previously need to be configured. We recommend, again, using the app profile if possible, but I'm going to select the service account here for our purposes. And just to make sure that my teams are covered for things like cloud backup, I'm going to select Teams. We put it on a schedule, and if we choose to, remove objects from existing containers if they no longer match those containers' rules. That means that since I've been scanning with the default Express profile, I want to remove things from that default container and put them into my new containers. If everything looks good, we can save it and wait for it to run on its own schedule, or we can save it and run it now. I'm going to click that. If I now go back over to my scan profiles, we can now see that we still have our default scan profile, which was looking for things like my mailboxes and my SharePoint Online site collections. And we have our new advanced profile, which is going to find our Office 365 team groups and then put them into that new container, and then take all of the other groups that it finds and puts them into a separate container. So now, once that's done running and it synchronizes to the AvePoint Online services, I can go into things like Cloud Backup and see everything broken up into those separate containers. This gives me the ability to make certain decisions on things like what gets backed up and what doesn't. This can make it even easier for me to browse for content in things like cloud management and cloud governance. Thanks for watching this short video on how to create an advanced auto discovery scan profile in AvePoint Online Services.